It's the show where Hawaii's newsmakers come to talk and to take your questions live. From the nation's capital to Honolulu Hale, from the state legislature to the fifth floor. We bring the experts to you and ask them what you want to know. Spotlight Hawaii with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalesuji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
Well, aloha and good morning. We've made it to the end of another work week. I'm Ryan Kalesuji, joined by Yunji Denise. Thanks for tuning in here on this Aloha Friday to Spotlight Hawaii on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. This morning, we're going to be spotlighting traffic as well as what's happening above our roadways with Skyline.
That's right. We have invited Roger Morton. He is the director of the Department of Transportation Services for the City and County of Honolulu. Thanks so much for being here, sir.
Aloha, and thank you for having me today.
Well, we're so happy to have you, and we are excited to get this update. A lot of eyes, of course, on all the work you do, but particularly on Skyline as of late. Tell us, broad strokes, how's it going?
Actually, overall, the system is operating exceptionally well. And let me give you an example that I'm really proud of. For us, the on-time standard that we use for rail is it's on time if it's within 10 seconds of its scheduled time. And I want to compare that with our bus system. For the bus, the on-time standard is within 1 minute early to 5 minutes late. So how are we doing? For rail, 98.5% of all trips are within 10 seconds of the schedule. And for bus, 71.6% of all trips met the 5-minute standard. It just gives you an idea of the power of taking transit off the streets, where the buses have to compete with traffic. Skyline operates on its own guideway, and therefore we can keep exceptionally good on-time standards. What other things have come up that we want to talk that have? Certainly, we've kept our elevator and our escalator contractors busy as they fine-tune and adjust the vertical transportation systems. That's been those are the couple of things anyway that I talk about for how we're doing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the ridership overall. You know, of course, there was a large number of people that came out for that first weekend that was free. A lot of people really anticipating this project, being able to ride Skyline for the first time. Since then, we have seen those numbers drop. What can you tell us about ridership overall with this, with Skyline, and how maybe the city is marketing this moving forward, knowing that this is only a segmented part of the entire project?
Well, yeah, that's true. So far, our ridership since we've gone to paid time has been between 3,000 to 4,000 riders per day. I think that I hope to get by the year's end to get about 8,000 people per day using the Skyline. I know that our ridership will go up when the universities and the schools go back into service. And I'm hopeful that we will be able to achieve the ones that we do. But I've told people that we need to be clear-eyed about ridership. We've opened a system that connects between East Kapolei and Halawa Aloha Stadium Station. And that's not, we opened that up knowing that was not the prime destinations for people. It's simply the segment that we have available now.
Yunji's actually muted right now. We've been doing this for 3 years. We still struggle with the mute button.
I apologize for that.
I know how that goes.
I am interested in those ridership numbers because there is a fixation from the larger community. I think folks are just looking for metrics as to how we gauge whether or not this is really worth all of the investment that has gone into this project. I wonder what some of the other metrics are that you look at. You mentioned on-time arrivals and departures, but how do we see whether, how do you look at Skyline as to whether or not it is a success? Is it riders? Is it transient-oriented development that obviously takes some time, but, getting more and more communities that are built along the rail? Or what do you look for?
Well, personally, the biggest thing that I look for that's been apparent to me is the wow factor that's apparent when people ride the system for the first time. Although Skyline goes from Kapolei to Halawa Station, the route provides exceptional service for a small niche of riders. For example, if you're riding from Halawa Stadium to Leeward Community College, it just takes you 8 minutes, and it takes you 8 minutes every time. And of course, we look at the overall system compliance with our agreed upon performance measures that our contractor Hitachi must meet. We set the bar very high, and we have penalties if within the contract if there are performance issues. These cover all kinds of factors, including system availability, mechanical issues, on-time issues, system cleanliness, and the staffing of the frontline employees, and of course, safety.
You know, one of the things that some riders have spoken concerns about is just the overall park and ride situation at some of the stations, being able to leave their cars, get on at one of the stations, and being able to have that flexibility. There are some stations that obviously have more access and more availability for that. Looking at some of the things and lessons learned over these past few weeks, what are you seeing with some of the parking situations of how people can get there, and some of the accommodations being made for maybe some of the more popular areas that do not allow or do not currently have a place for people to park and get on the rail?
Well, first, our first effort really is to try to get people to use transit to get to the rail system, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But we have 3 park and rides. We have one at West Oahu. We have one at Ho'opili. We have one at Halawa Station. And there's space available at all of those park and ride spots. So in the longer term, we are planning additional park and rides. At East Kapolei, we are planning 1,000 spots there. We are still trying to figure out how do we deal with Pearl Highlands and our connection to Central Oahu. But those, I think, will be things that we have to have figured out by the time our system gets into town, which is still a few years down the road. So, I think that from people coming from the West, you can park the car at the West Oahu station. We have lots and lots of security cameras in the park and ride lots. So we're going to do we're going to try to keep all of the automobiles safe from any type of vandalism or theft or anything like that. We have our level 2 security that will be periodically going in and out of the park and rides. So we're going to do our best to try to make the park and ride situation free. Right now, our park and rides are free, and we have no intentions on, we might look at that issue after the system gets into downtown Honolulu.
I want to bring in a question from the audience that is talking about something you alluded to right at the top there, and that's the integration of the full transit system with Skyline. Heidi is asking, will more buses be routed to the rail in order to increase ridership? Talk about how you are integrating those two systems and what more we can look forward to.
Okay, on both the west side of the line and the east side of the line, we've added or adjusted routes to provide a 10-minute connecting service. And that's because the rail also operates every 10 minutes. So we're doing our best to make that connection on the west side and the final connection going into town to match the rail so that people can have a very easy connection. In addition to that, we've actually connected about 25 area bus routes to Skyline. And we've got a little tweaking to do on those. We want to make sure that our new bus schedules work given traffic conditions. And currently, some of the routes have so much time in the schedule that they actually get people to their destinations faster than our schedule. So after school opening, after DOE and UH go back to classes, we're going to analyze our new bus routes to make sure that they do coincide with traffic, because we know that traffic during the summer is a breeze. And after we open UH and DOE schools, traffic will get more challenging. And that's when we're really going to go back and give a super good inspection of how well we've timed our buses, not just to meet with the rail, but to operate after they leave rail and operate on the streets.
Obviously, as we talked about ridership, you would like to see more people, and even saying up to 8,000, hopefully by the end of the year. I'm wondering how much of the ridership and the income that is made from the revenue that is made from this is tied to the overall budget of the projections for the cost of the rail, noting that this is something that is going to take some time, and we know that there are money that now needs to be allocated out of the city budget that goes directly now to just the overall maintenance of Skyline. How much of that will be dependent on ridership, and where else is the money going to come from in order to sustain these services beyond, noting that, again, this is only a segment of what the completed project will look like?
I'm glad you mentioned this is only a segment, because what I expect would be that if we get 8,000 riders per day, to be frank with you, in a transit system where most transit systems get about 25% of their revenue from fares, for the rail, until we really get it to be into town, we're not going to be getting much revenue from the rail. When we get it into town, we project 85,000 riders per day. And at that point, our rail ridership per mile will be our least cost system. But it'll be, as we extend rail, the cost of rail goes up marginally, but the amount of ridership will increase by tenfold.
I'm interested, at the beginning, right before Skyline opened, there was a lot of hubbub over the lack of restrooms. This is something that had been announced years before, but all of a sudden it seemed like folks just came to be aware that there were not going to be public restrooms at the stations, and there was some pushback on that. Now that the system has been up and running, how have people sort of worked that out? I know there are restrooms, of course, for the staff who are at the stations, but have the public been able to access that? Has this proved to be any kind of a problem?
Well, our contract with Hitachi, who's responsible for maintaining the restrooms, and there are restrooms at every station, our contract says that these are closed restrooms, but that they are to be opened upon request of a station attendant. That's a little bit of a complication for Hitachi, but that's the requirement that we have for them, is that. And we ask people to understand that. Now, the reason that transit systems here and other places don't have open access restrooms is because of the issue in other places having to do with security of those types of things. So I think that a closed access restroom where you have to get a key or a code in order to get in the restroom has become somewhat common, even in our fast food restaurants and our restaurants and other parts. And that's the rule that we have for rail.
Looking ahead, as we look at the next segment, there is a lot of anticipation about this next segment, which will take it to the airport and Middle Street. How much more of the increase of ridership do you think that this will have? Talking to the mayor, he says that this will be a game changer once this next portion is done. And how confident are you that this will stay ahead of schedule? We know that we've had Laurie Kahikina on this program. She talked about some of the challenges that remain for this next segment with some of the issues that they continue to have with contractors. But talk about this next segment and the importance and significance it is to the overall project.
I can talk to how important it is. As we open up the next segment, we open up a number of additional large employment centers. We open up the Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam through the Makalapa Gate. And that's really important because within Pearl Harbor, they are just getting started on a massive construction program where they're going to add another 3,000 or 4,000 jobs to the base. And we've been in discussions with the Navy to see if we can figure out a way so that we can rely upon Skyline, city buses, Navy buses, so that we can provide a good way that we can get the Pearl Harbor shipyard, Pearl Harbor depots, all the Pearl Harbor workers into the base using public transportation. Then after that, we get to airport, and we know that airport, in addition to being the place where we all go to take planes, it's also a very large employment center in its own right. And so I think that if you're an airport employee where parking is at a premium and you happen to be within the Holo catchment area, that's going to be a great option for that. And then finally, we get to Middle Street. And Middle Street is our jumping off point to Kalihi, to Tripler Hospital, to other places like that. So we project that ridership will go up from what I hope to be 8,000 to 10,000 to about 25,000 by the time we get to our second segment open by end of 26 to get to that level.
You mentioned school starting up soon, and I have to say, traffic has been a breeze. It's been so nice. I'm wondering, we've seen these stories about the shortage of bus drivers, and that's leading to some cuts in bus service for students. Tell us a little bit about how students might be able to take advantage of the system and what you're hoping for when it comes to young people actually being able to access Skyline and the wider transit system.
Sure. And we've just, the DOE and the city have cooperated, and the DOE has just kicked off a program. So for this upcoming school year, any high school student, and that's grade 9 to 12, that DOE will make available to them a free transit pass that will be included on their school ID. It'll be like a Holo card on a school ID. And this will be provided to the students for free, but only with parental consent. And so DOE has set up a system to allow parents to learn about the program and to provide a mechanism for them to give consent to the children, and then the schools will enable those school ID cards to be useful for that. That's a $400 value for one student in high school to get this free transit. DOE will make these free transit available for 10 months of the year, starting in August and going to the end of May.
Well, let's hope that will help to kind of alleviate some of the back-to-school traffic that always happens and comes up, and maybe provides an option for some of these parents. This is a department that covers a wide range of areas, of course, not just Skyline. So we want to get to some of the other projects that you're working on. Something else that recently made news is this pedestrian bridge over the Alawai, connecting the communities of that area into Waikiki. If you can talk about where things are at, there has been some pushback by some residents who say that this bridge may cause more congestion in the community. How are you responding to just maybe some of the criticism? And if you can tell us some of the benefits maybe also that you believe that this pedestrian bridge will provide to the area.
Well, first of all, it's a pedestrian bridge, so don't think it'll create more congestion. If it does, the congestion will be pedestrians and bicyclists. The purpose, we at the city are putting a larger emphasis on bicycle networks. The city charter was amended a few years ago to make it a city policy and a responsibility of the Department of Transportation Services to try to implement a bike-friendly city. And that's what we're doing. It is, in some of our streets, it's right now kind of scary or even terrifying to operate a bike on some streets. And so we are putting a lot of emphasis on developing complete streets with protected bike lanes. I'd like to see some bike paths that are off-street, low-stress type bike paths. In addition to the Alapuna Bridge that we're building, we're going to be improving University Avenue, because we know that one of the great destinations for bicyclists particularly is to connect the university campus with Waikiki, where a lot of students live and where a lot of students work. So we're doing that. We'll be extending our King Street lane. We're working currently on getting ready to implement our North King Street protected bike lane. We were provided a grant through Representative Case's office to plan for a South Shore bike network that would improve the existing bike corridors and also add in links so that we could have a complete system of bike paths that would go all the way from Nanakuli to the University of Hawaii at Manoa. That's a big, ambitious project. We're doing that project in full cooperation with the state. The state owns about half of that right of way. The city owns the other half. And so right now we're doing the planning, we're doing the environmental reviews, and we'll be looking at funding that again primarily through federal funding, which has been made available through all of this new infrastructure law that has made significant more money available for bike programs available.
All the way from Nanakuli, that's an enormous system. What is the cost of something like that, and where will you put, the initial resources? I know you're in the planning phases now, but where do you think that how soon could we see something like that?
I don't think that we would, we'll see it in segments, and we won't see it as one grand program at all. We have a number of links there. Some of them are deteriorated. For example, our Pearl Harbor historic bike path. We're doing a few improvements right now we're in the Best Buy area right there, but that's one link. There's a few other ones that are in need of repair. So I would see these types of programs being decade-long commitments to where we do a little bit each year. And largely, from my perspective, what I hope to do is under the new IIJA, about 60% of the funding that we'll probably get comes to us through formula. So much for population, so much for miles traveled, and all of those things. But about 40% of it comes in the manner of discretionary grants, competitive grants, where the government puts out criteria of what they're looking for. They're looking for sustainability. They're looking for climate change issues, and cities and counties compete for those dollars. And so my hope is that we will finance these types of programs largely through discretionary money that we would not otherwise get. And that money comes at a 90%, 10% federal share.
What can you tell us about another project that I know that you have been working on is the traffic signals, upgrades to the lights, and just the overall patterns to help with the flow of traffic? Any updates that you can provide us in that area of the things that you're working on in that realm?
Sure. And we've just initiated a program. The city has about 700 or so traffic signals or signalized intersections. And the state has a little bit more than 200 on state roads. And so both the city and the state have kicked off a cooperative program where both will be replacing all of their traffic signals with more modern traffic signal control boxes. Those are the little boxes you see on the side of the road by traffic signals. And what we'll be putting in, we'll be basically taking out an Apple II, more or less, from the old ones that are basically obsolete and hard to get parts for. And we'll be installing state-of-the-art traffic controllers, which allow us to do a lot more things like something called adaptive traffic control. That's one of the ones. Ultimately, these will be future-proof so that they'll be able to deal with connected vehicles. That's actual vehicles, cars, your car, my car, that can talk to the traffic signals. That's all Buck Rogers stuff, but it's moving very, very quickly. That'll be dependent upon national standards on exactly how that works, and also on the introduction of these technologies into new vehicles from the manufacturers. So what we're doing is we're putting in new signal systems that can immediately help us synchronize traffic and improve flow, but in the longer term can also help us take care of some of this autonomous vehicle operations that are going. It's amazing that in San Francisco right now, you can actually take a driverless taxi anywhere in the city.
I can't decide if that's a good or a bad thing. It makes me nervous, but maybe I'm a little slow. I still like to have the wheel, be behind the wheel myself. But that would be nice eventually. Maybe they can take my kids to all their games and things.
The brave new world.
Yes, it is. I want to go back to Skyline. We're almost out of time.
Sure.
For folks who haven't ridden it, you did talk about that wow factor. I was able to take my family, and I will say that the view is just incredible. You get to see the, parts of our island that, you may have lived here for years, but you see it in a whole new light. For folks who haven't gotten a chance to get on there, I got a couple of texts from people. How do I do this? Where do I go? That kind of thing. What would you say to folks who want to find out about how to ride the train and why they should take a trip?
Well, I think they should take a trip just because we've all spent a lot of money on this. And I really do think that people at a minimum should take a look and inspect what they're getting for their money. But to answer your question, the best place to go is go to our website at www.honolulu.gov/Skyline, or just Google Skyline. In our website, we include a lot of how-to videos, we include maps, and we include links to other things like related bus information. So that's one thing. The second thing I'd say is to learn how to maximize your value with Holo. That would mean, number one, get a Holo card, register your Holo card at www.holocard.net, and use the capping feature. Let me explain that because people don't understand it. Our Holo cards are connected in real time to our central computers. And what we urge people to do is just put money on the card. Don't buy a monthly pass. Just put money on the card. And our apps will guarantee that you get the best value. If you could buy a day pass for $7.50, but if you put money on the card, once you get to $7.50, the rest of your trip is free. You can buy a monthly bus pass for $80 and put it on a card, or you can just put money on the card. And if you reach $80, the rest of the month will be free. So that's one thing I do. The second thing is I learned how to use a transit app to help plan your trips. And I suggest two good free apps. One, you could go to Google Maps, or two, you could use an app called Transit. Both of them are excellent. And these will give you a means that you can plan trips, and you can look for scheduled times, or you can look for actual real-time arrival information. So I think those are three things that people got to get used to when using public transportation now.
Well, a lot happening here in your department, and we certainly thank you, Roger Morton, for taking time this morning to update us on Skyline and all things that are happening regarding transportation here in the city and county of Honolulu. Thanks so much for your time this morning.
And thank you very much for having us.
Aloha.
Aloha. Wonderful to hear from him, and very interesting to hear about the progress that Skyline is making, the integration of the bus system. You heard him talking about how, they're trying to make sure that people are able to have a complete ride, that they don't necessarily have to park and ride, but that they could take public transportation all the way through, and really hoping that this does make a difference when it comes to back to school traffic. The DOE making it now a new program that all parents, if you know parents who have high school aged kids in the DOE system, they can actually get that student ID card to be registered as a Holo card, essentially as a bus pass and a Skyline pass, and get to ride the system for free for 10 months out of the year. Significant savings and a great idea to try to alleviate some of that back to school rush.
Yeah, but so far, he's saying that, of course, the ridership was large during that initial launch, and they're seeing about 3,000 to 4,000 riders a day, hoping to get that number to 8,000 by the end of the year. But you heard about the importance of that next segment, which will include areas and access to Pearl Harbor, as well as the airport and Middle Street, that could add up to 20,000 is what they're hoping per day. And really, as the mayor also said, will be a game changer for the entire program. But so far, you could hear from the director, he's pleased with how ridership and just the overall experience has been going, their on-time arrival, as well as just the views, as you alluded to, and then he did as well, that it provides for those who are in the area. Also briefly touch about the Alawai pedestrian bridge and the importance of that project, as well as a number of other projects, including the bike paths expansion, as well as traffic integration with lights. So a lot happening there at the city and county of Honolulu regarding transportation. I want to encourage everybody, if they miss any portion of this, you can always catch this as a rebroadcast on Channel 50, as well as on a podcast and back here on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. Before we sign off this morning, Yunji and I have an announcement to make. Next week, Monday, will actually be our last episode of Spotlight Hawaii here on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. Yunji, we started this 3 years ago, doing this every day at the beginning during COVID, really beginning this as a way to get and connect people with some of the newsmakers in our community. And it really has been quite a crazy few years as we've navigated through the pandemic. but certainly something that I don't think either one of us expected that we'd still be doing 3 years later.
We were going to do it for the length of lockdown, and lockdown lasted a lot longer, I think, than anyone in our community had expected. And then this show continued on. We're going to talk a lot more about what we'll be doing in the future on Monday. And we'll also be including our guest in that conversation. Our guest is former Governor David Ige. We thought that he had been such an institution for this program, given, his position of leadership during the pandemic. We had so many questions for him about lockdown, tourism, vaccine availability, on and on, that we thought it would be appropriate to have him back and catch up with him, see how he's been doing, his plans for the future, and just what it's been like for him to get back to civilian life after, 8 years on the 5th floor of the Hawaii State Capitol. So join us back here on Monday for our final episode of Spotlight Hawaii. We hope you have a great weekend. Much more to come. We'll see you right back here at 10:30 on Monday. Take care.
Aloha. Have a great weekend.